On today's show, I got to bring him in. Kevin Gray, the one. Kevin Gray Sports. We got to talk about Tim Hardaway Jr. at the presser. He was there. We asked him some questions and some interesting answers from Tim Hardaway Jr., specifically about Kristaps Porzingis, what he has to do this season. And then we'll get into that Lauri Markkanen trade and talk about why the Mavs didn't make it happen. All on today's Locked On Mavs.
Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and coordinator for the Locked On Podcast Network. And joining me, friend of the show, like almost co-host. This is your second time this month. I think you've hosted this, so you're getting close. Getting close there. Kevin Gray, what you got for me?
I'm glad to be here, man. Like I said, it's always good to be here with you guys. The best thing I got for you is to subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports on YouTube. That's the best thing I got for you at the moment.
Hey, do it.
But yeah, we're less than 4 weeks away from camp starting, so I'm excited. It's hard to believe that the offseason has gone as fast as it has gone already. But guess what? We're going to get some real basketball here pretty soon, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, Kevin Gray, obviously from 105.3 The Fan, and you can also go ahead and subscribe to his YouTube channel. I will tag it in the description below, so you can just go really easy. Just go down and click that little thing. YouTube makes it easy for you to cross-promote channels, so that's pretty cool. All right, today we are going to be talking about Tim Hardaway Jr., like I said, the Lauri Markkanen trade, and we have to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. RockAuto.com, amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit RockAuto.com and tell them that Locked On sent you. Before we get to the two things, there's something I didn't get to yesterday, and that was Sunday evening, WFAA had a special about Dale Hansen, the famed legend broadcaster, just the guy that you know, as a broadcaster, as a sports personality person, you're like, I want to be that guy, right? Like in DFW, is there anybody else that you just look at and you're like, I'd rather be him instead of Dale Hansen? It's like, that's the guy that you'd pick. He's been here the longest. He's been doing it the longest. And they had a really good tribute to him. He's retiring this week and had just a great clip. But Mark Cuban was on it. And I thought that was, there's some interesting things from that.
Yeah, Mark Cuban had a chance to get after Dale Hansen and get some revenge on him after all these years. So like I said, Dale Hansen's been around for long time, one of the best in the business, and retiring at this point with WFAA. Happy for Joe Trahan, who's taken over for him. But it was good to see Mark Cuban get a few jabs in with Dale this last time with him. It
was so good. And there's a couple things that I took away from that, and it's not necessarily Mavs things, but I think Mavs fans will be interested in them. One of them, Mark Cuban was going through and he said, all right, rapid fire, tell me what you think about this personality or this sports figure. And he would say like Barry Switzer. And then they brought up the whole interview with him and Barry Switzer when he was punching him in the arm and all that stuff. I don't even know if I'd ever seen that because I didn't grow up here. And then he went through like just different, Nolan Ryan, and went through different sports figures. He came to Jerry Jones. And when asked to explain Jerry Jones, talk about Jerry Jones, Dale Hansen said, I actually like the man, which is kind of a funny thing to say. He's like, I actually like the man. I've gone after him, blah, blah, blah. But he said, I wish he wasn't the GM of my favorite team. I wish he could get satisfaction from just being the owner of the team. And sitting there watching this, I was watching it on my iPad on the side, and I'm just sitting there looking at it, and he's sitting across from Mark Cuban in the old number 7 lounge in the AAC, right above the practice court. Like you can see the Mavs practice court and everything. And he said that specific thing to Mark Cuban, and that kind of blew my mind a little bit because isn't that exactly what we're going through right now? Just a little bit. He doesn't have the title, Mark Cuban, but we're seeing that right now happen with the Mavericks.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans' eyes were opened this offseason and even maybe prior to that they felt like Mark Cuban in a lot of ways was just like Jerry Jones in the fact that he wants to have full control and autonomy of his team to make all the final decisions, whether it be business-wise or in this case basketball-wise. And I think the way things went down with Donnie Nelson and Rick Carlisle and then things being brought full circle with Jason Kidd being brought back, Dirk Nowitzki being brought back to this organization, a lot of folks felt like this is Jerry Jones 2.0 with Mark Cuban. And for a lot of folks, that wasn't necessarily the greatest realization, because it's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. He does run things just like Jerry Jones. And, that's how feelings get hurt. And for a lot of Mavs fans, that wasn't necessarily great this offseason.
There's been many times I wish I knew what Mark Cuban or anybody was thinking. But that was one of the times when I just wish that I would have known what Mark Cuban was thinking when he said that, because it applies to it. And I think if you or me ever ask Mark Cuban in some kind of scrum or something, we asked him, hey, when you did that interview with Dale Hansen and he was talking about Jerry Jones and making the end of the day decisions for the team, I think he would just play it off. As, well, I'm not the GM. Nico's the GM, and Jerry Jones is like, the difference for a lot of people that don't follow the Cowboys or don't follow football is that Jerry Jones is literally the GM, right? Like that's his title. Like there is not a person that is like the GM, right? And so it is a little bit different title-wise and all that kind of stuff, the difference between what's going on with the Mavericks and the Cowboys. But can you explain that any further for people that may not know about American football?
Yeah, I think for Jerry Jones, he feels like he owns the team. He should be able to make all the decisions when it comes to the business of the Cowboys, or the football decisions when it comes to what the personnel looks like. And for most teams, that isn't necessarily the case. You separate the owner and the general manager and the president of operations. For Jerry Jones, he feels like, if I'm going to be the one writing the checks, I should be the one making the final decisions. And for Cowboys fans,
sound familiar?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's a point of frustration for Cowboys fans for a long time, much like how Mark Cuban feels. If I'm going to be the one actually paying these players, cutting the checks, I should ultimately be the one who makes the final decisions on what this team looks like. And folks don't necessarily feel that way. They say, well, maybe you should just get out of the way, let basketball people make basketball decisions. You cut the checks, and we'll be able to put a roster together that's going to do the best to win basketball games. But Mark Cuban, Jerry Jones, and folks like them don't necessarily feel that way. And that's their prerogative. As those guys who own their teams, that is their full prerogative. And it's the frustration of fans of those who like those teams that are kind of tired of it at this point.
Yeah. So in all fairness, though, I guess we should still give him a chance with the new regime, with Nico Harrison and all that stuff, to try and figure out if it's going to be the exact same way. Now, you can see my face on YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube. I mean, you don't just. I mean, this is the first time he's brought in his own guy, basically, as making the player decisions, the personnel decisions. So I'm not super encouraged to think that it would be different, but we'll see. So we'll see with Mark Cuban. I found that quote very interesting with Dale Hansen. The other thing I found interesting from that interview was Mark Cuban, before he bought the Mavericks, talked with Dale Hansen and knew Dale Hansen. That they even mentioned that their relationship goes back way farther than the Mavericks in Dallas. He said that he tried to get him to be a spokesman for broadcast.com when he was trying to sell it. When Mark Cuban made his big money, like when Mark Cuban made like a ton of money off of that deal and basically became a billionaire off of it. And they were talking to two different guys. One guy was another personality that I don't recall the name. And they said that Mark Cuban said he was going to give that guy 2%, but he would have given Dale Hansen more. And he said 2% would have been worth $200 million. And Dale Hansen turned him down at the time. So imagine being Dale Hansen. You turn down this guy, Mark Cuban, and he goes and sells broadcast.com, which eventually turns into all the streaming. Literally, if you're watching this on YouTube, the technology is from that. And you turn down $200 million if you're Dale
That's
Hansen.
crazy.
That is a crazy what if. I don't know if we could do a whole pod on it, but it's wild.
I'm sure if Dale Hansen maybe had the chance to do it all over again, he may have maybe done a little bit of haggling, maybe a little bit of negotiation with Cuban to make him a little bit better offer to come on. But to think that that's worth $200 million, yep, that's pretty good. Yeah, that kind of stings a little bit. Yeah.
Great stuff on Dale Hansen all over the place. I think it's WFAA.com/Dale Retiring if you want to go check out more. Obviously, we're partnered with WFAA, but we're excited to see everything that they're putting out this week about him. So go check that out. And we will come back talking about Tim Hardaway Jr. We got some good stuff to break into. He talked about how he belongs in Dallas. A really great commentary from him and a really great comment. So we'll get into that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Sweatblock. Sweatblock is the thing to help you with your sweating problem. It's doctor created, doctor recommended. It works for up to 7 days. I'm telling you, I used this over my break. I got to take a vacation, went home to see my family. We were walking around outside a lot. We were going to baseball games. I went to a Reds game. I got to, hang out at the lake. And this sweat block, it's a white. You put it on the night before. You wipe your armpits. You wipe your lower back, whatever. And you don't sweat for 7 days. I'm telling you, it works. It worked for me. It worked on the plane there and back. It worked at a baseball game. It worked at church. It worked wherever you need it. So get Sweat Block. Go ahead and wear what you want to wear. You don't have to change your clothes all the time. Now, in Texas, I'm a bigger guy. Some of you that are bigger guys, you're going to have to change clothes every day. Just kind of the way that it is. But you don't have to change clothes just because of underarm sweat and all that. So get to wear what you want. It's the little secret to your confidence. Go to sweatblock.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get 20% off of Sweatblock products. There are all kinds of stuff as well, not just the wipes. They have deodorant. They have stuff for the undercarriage. They have all kinds of things for you. You can get them at Amazon, get them at CVS, but you can also get them at sweatblock.com. Also, I want to tell you about Indeed.com. When hiring gets hard, you need Indeed. It's the job site that makes hiring incredibly simple. You can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Indeed makes it so easy for you. So don't just hope that your perfect candidate will find you. Indeed's hiring tools help you cut through the noise, hire faster and smarter. In fact, Indeed Instant Match provides a list of quality candidates whose resumes are on Indeed the moment you post a sponsored job. Right there. They're going to be right there for you. If you've ever gone through a job search, you're like trying to find every single way. It reminds me of Michael Scott in The Office when he's looking for a job, and all of a sudden you hear monsters in his office, and Dim from the other end of the office goes, "It's monster.com, not monsters." Well, if you know that people are looking at these sites, the best candidates are on those sites looking, and the best one is Indeed. That's the one that you want to put your job on. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked. Get a $75 job credit at Indeed.com/locked. Again, Indeed.com/locked. Offer valid through September 30th. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we're back with Kevin Gray, and we got to talk about Tim Hardaway Jr. Let's first get your thoughts on the presser overall. Anything that was a non-Tim Hardaway Jr. thing that you want to bring up or had thoughts on that stood out to you as maybe interesting or different than what we expected?
I found it interesting that Nico Harrison said that this was the brainchild of Michael Finley and that they wanted to make sure that this was something that was important for this organization to recognize their players, because I don't know about you, I wasn't necessarily expecting them to do an introductory press conference of the guys that they had brought over, but the fact that they did it and that Nico Harrison made it a point to make sure that he said that Michael Finley was the one that came up with it, I thought was pretty interesting. And I think the other part too was, this was kind of one of the few times this offseason that we've had a chance to talk with Jason Kidd and to get some of his thoughts on some of the things that have happened this offseason, bringing in Jared Dudley, his visit to Latvia and to Slovenia to go see Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. It was good to be able to have that conversation with them. He talked with us a little bit afterwards, after the press conference was over with, and let us in on how he was feeling about some things going on this offseason. So hopefully as this offseason continues to go on, as we get ready for the regular season, that'll be something that's more of a regular occurrence given what we know about this team and what they should be going into this upcoming season. So those are some of my takeaways from it. I thought it was good though overall.
Yeah, you mentioned that Jason Kidd stayed after. That's something we didn't talk about yesterday, but Jason Kidd did stay after for a while. And Nico Harrison. Isaac and I did talk to Nico Harrison for a second, and him and Isaac were wearing the same shoes, which I thought was pretty funny. That's pretty good taste for Isaac, right? That's a pretty good, a former Nike executive is wearing the same shoes as you. You're doing pretty good in the shoe department. But Jason Kidd stayed even longer than Nico did and was talking to people. It was basically a second scrum that happened around him. And I thought that was good. I thought it was positive. He didn't just dart out and leave and not answer any more questions. Now Dwayne Price did like corner him and made sure that he couldn't leave.
Him and my good buddy Mac Engel, they were like, "Look, we got some hard-hitting questions to ask you here," and they did a good job. And we was able to get to some. Yeah,
it's that Fort Worth Star Telegram guys. They just can't.
Hey, Mac is good at what he does, man. He's gonna get those questions in and make sure he gets those questions answered for sure.
So yeah, I did find that interesting as well. But let's get into Tim Hardaway Jr. We've been talking about this a little bit. He had this quote about coming back to Dallas, and I just thought that this was really good. As a Mavs fan, you want to feel good about guys that come back, and not just, I decided to come back because they gave me the most money or it was just some ancillary reason. But Tim Hardaway Jr. really feels a connection to this place and really feels a connection to Dallas. So I thought that this quote was awesome.
Playing alongside of KP for these last 4 or 5 years now, and alongside Luka since I've been here, been part of the Mavs, I did really feel like, I think after the year before we got to the bubble and before we went into that transition of the COVID protocols and everything, leading up to that point, I really felt like this was a place for me to really flourish and find my niche. So I think just after that, moving forward, I really felt like I was part of something special, like I said before, and I mean, all the way up to now, I do feel like, yeah, this is home, and I do feel like, I'm supposed to be here. I belong.
I love that quote, especially that end part. I feel like this was home. I belong. I really like that because you always want your athletes to feel like, especially if it's your hometown team, right? Now, this isn't mine, but I know for a lot of Mavs fans I've talked to, they feel real identity with this team. Like Mavs fans call themselves MFFLs. Like that is an identity almost at a certain point. And so you really want your sports figures and the guys that play on your team to feel that. And I think Tim Hardaway Jr. does.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the Mavericks really wanted to make sure that he was a priority because, there were reports that he turned down more money to come back to Dallas, which is huge for him because I think it shows a few things that, one, I think he knows how successful he has been with this organization and that they give him the best opportunity to be the best version of himself. But I think it also speaks to how this organization, at least for him, has made an impact on him, not only what he does in terms of his community work and all the things that he does outside of the court, but the fact that he has played with Luka Doncic and obviously Kristaps Porzingis for more time, this is a place where he feels comfortable at and that he can be the best version of himself. And for him to make that commitment to this organization, I think speaks volumes to him, not only as a person, but also as a player who understands his situation and what's the best situation for him going forward. And for him to speak to that and to do so the way that he did, I thought was a really cool moment, especially for Mavericks fans who feel like at times folks don't necessarily choose to play for this organization. Tim Hardaway made it very clear that he wanted to be a Maverick, and I think that's important for those who love and follow this basketball team.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. It's definitely positive. I mean, we walked away as soon as we learned that he turned down more money and that he could have gone somewhere else. That's an extremely positive thing for the Mavericks that somebody came back like that. Now, I'm curious what do you think his answer was? This is a good situation. Is it a good situation for Tim Hardaway or is it a good situation for him as part of a team, right? There's a difference there, and maybe they're the same thing, but for me, does he think that this team is a special group or is it a special situation for him? Because it is a special situation for him, right? He comes in, he plays with a playmaker like Luka Doncic. He was not playing as well as he is now, obviously with the Knicks or even with Atlanta before that, or with the Knicks even before that part. But it's interesting to see that and to try and distinguish, and maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm just splitting hairs here, but what do you think he meant by that?
I think he meant both. I mean, the situation for him is good basketball-wise. He's going to be continuing to play with a guy that's going to get him the best shots possible, and I think he's established himself as one of the leaders on this team. So for him to recognize that this situation is special, not just for him personally in terms of his own success as a basketball player, but the actual impact that he can have as a leader on this team and how he continues to be a guy that's very intense night in and night out. But folks like Luka Doncic, you can tell, embrace what Tim Hardaway brings on a night-to-night basis. And I think that's something that he can continue to build upon as an established leader on this team to help them build the kind of continuity, consistency, and chemistry that they're looking forward to be able to be a team that has opportunities going forward to get deeper into the Western Conference. You need guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. to not only commit to the organization, but continue to grow and establish themselves as guys that can be trusted in those big moments. And I think he understands that moment, and Luka Doncic is going to continue to help trust in him in those moments going forward too, I think.
You mentioned that Tim has kind of become a leader for the Mavs, and so I had to look it up. Who on the Mavericks has more experience in the NBA than Tim Hardaway Jr.? Just off the top of your head. And if those playing at home, go ahead and give your answer out loud if you can Who on the Mavericks has more NBA experience than Tim Hardaway Jr.? Tim Hardaway Jr.'s been in the league 8 years. Start thinking through some of the players, like, well, it's not Luka, it's not Porzingis.
I think the only other person close, I think, is Dwight Powell. If I'm
Dwight Powell's at 7 years, right? Reggie Bullock's 8 years. Tim Hardaway Jr. and Trey Burke's 8 years. Tim Hardaway Jr. tied with Burke and Bullock, but the most NBA experience on this team. That's pretty wild, right? Because you just don't think of him as that veteran type guy, but he is at this point on this team. And some people clown the fact that some other people say, "Oh, this is a young team," or that when Cuban says this is a young team, or somebody says this is a young team. It's an experienced team. There's kind of a difference between that. They're not young necessarily age-wise. You got some of these guys. Maxey is older than Tim Hardaway Jr., but he's only been in the league 4 years, so that's less NBA experience. But that's really interesting. He has become a veteran, and it's cool that he is kind of sort of leading the way of a guy that's becoming a Maverick for a long time with this extension.
Yeah, and you mentioned guys like Bullock and Trey Burke and Dwight Powell in Cleveland. Like, these are the guys, especially in Tim Hardaway's case, he's going to have to continue to be a guy that kind of shows Luka Doncic how to be a leader in this league and how to be able to grow and learn. Because as much as Luka Doncic we see as the quote-unquote leader from obviously being the best player standpoint, he's still got a lot of growing and maturing to do as a 22-year-old who is going to be the face of not only this team, but really a face of the league going forward for the next 10-plus years. And it's good to have him surrounded by guys like a Tim Hardaway Jr. who have been through the ropes in this league and know what it means to last in the NBA. And I think Tim Hardaway will continue to be a positive influence on Luka Doncic and this team as a whole. So I think there's more reasons why, just beyond the basketball stuff, that it was important for Tim Hardaway to be able to come back for this team.
Oh, yeah, and he's another one of those guys. Obviously, he's Tim Hardaway Jr., right? He's been around the NBA for a long time, and it seems like these guys it seems like all these guys that come in that their dads played in the league, they're all just solid, no-nonsense, play basketball type guys, right? Your Klay Thompsons, your there's a ton of other guys. Steph Curry, I guess you could call him Curry. You could put all those guys in that category of just guys that come in and play. And I think that's so great. A guy that's not gonna cause any problems, really. And I think that's another solid thing for the Mavericks. So, again, glowing remarks on the Tim Hardaway Jr. re-sign. And so we'll talk more about Kristaps Porzingis. Now, he mentioned at the beginning of that last answer that he has been with Porzingis for 4 to 5 years. Now, I was sitting on this question and I was ready to pounce on it as soon as he gave me the light, because as soon as he mentioned he'd been with Porzingis for a while, I was ready to ask it. So I'm going to ask him about Kristaps Porzingis coming up, what he needs to do to get back to KP form that he's seen. Tim Hardaway Jr. seen him as an all-star. So let's talk to Tim Hardaway Jr. about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about RockAuto.com. Rock Auto is the place to get your car and auto parts. I guess an auto and a car, same thing. Parts for your car or your truck. Save time and money using rockauto.com. There's so many different sites and so many different places you can get auto parts, but Rock Auto is the one place that has everything for you, that has it all laid out. It has it easily laid out for you. You don't have to go searching through, oh, what's the newest thing? Oh, what's the cheapest thing? You just go through and see from your car, search the make, the model, the year, all that, and you can see all of it in front of you. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solutions to your auto part needs. They have everything you can need. Brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go check it out. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? They know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Kevin Gray, let's get into Tim Hardaway Jr. I asked him a question. I kind of had to. He was ready for it, and you'll hear him say that here about Kristaps Porzingis and what he needs to do to get back.
Nick Angstadt, Locked On Network. This question is for Tim. You mentioned you've played with Kristaps Porzingis for a long time now. This past playoff series, this past year, was not at the level of play that he wanted to be. What do you think is the key for him going into this season?
I knew this question was coming up. Like I said, I mean, being his teammate probably the longest, more than anybody on the roster, I know KP. I know he's back in Latvia, busting his tail right now to get back to where he was before the injury when we were with the Knicks. So I know how much he loves the game. I know how much he works, and he's going to do whatever he can to get back to that level of mentality that he had. Injuries do play a part of the game. And we have to look at that as well with him not really having his rhythm or him not probably being that confident out there because of all the surgeries and everything that he had to go through. But I know what type of player he is. I know what he's capable of, probably more than anybody in here. And once you get that type of KP back, I think we could beat anybody.
So I was really thankful that he said that I knew this question was coming, because I appreciated that he had thought about it, right? And it's funny, and we laugh about it, and I laughed about it, but I appreciated that he had put some thought into it, and he say, man, I know somebody's going to ask me about Kristaps Porzingis, because it seems like the thing everybody wants to talk about in this offseason, because he's the key. Everybody's been saying he's the key for this next season. So I appreciated Tim Hardaway Jr. let us, pulled back the curtain a little bit and told us that he had been thinking about it. And there was two things in there that really stood out to me. He mentioned injuries for sure. That was one thing. And then he mentioned that with the injuries comes the confidence and the rhythm. Those were three things then that really hampered Kristaps Porzingis. And he admitted that as a teammate of his, a guy that's been around him for 4 to 5 years, 6 years, I guess maybe, has that he has seen that Kristaps Porzingis struggled with last season.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those things that Tim Hardaway Jr. mentioned are things that Porzingis has talked about for himself over the course of the last 2+ years, is that he's a confident and he's a rhythm player. He's a guy that needs reps. He needs to be out there.
He will tell you that, man.
Yes, he will. And that's why I say that, because he has been very vocal about what he needs to be in terms of the confidence, the rhythm, the feel for the game. I remember a couple of years ago, first talking to him, he had a poor game in one of his first games, coming back, from his ACL, and he just lamented about the fact that, he's got to get the rhythm and the feel of the game back. He's very much a feel type of player. So when he is actually connected into the game, not just from a mental, but a physical standpoint, Porzingis can be a guy that can be that 20 and 10 player, that a lot of folks think he needs to be consistently for this team to go where they need to go. But it's for him to stay mentally locked in night after night and not take nights off mentally where he's not necessarily getting the ball or he's not being featured in the offense. He's got to find different ways to impact the game. And I think you saw some of that a little bit in the Clippers series when he was basically turned, into an offensive decoy, by Rick Carlisle. He tried to find ways as the series went on to do more things to affect the game. He's got to take that same mentality going into this season while still refining his game as an offensive player to be able to be the full version of himself that he's going to have to be if they're going to continue to stick with him, for the next couple of years here.
Kevin Gray, have you ever seen the show Avatar: The Last Airbender?
No, I haven't.
You're missing out. It's one of the greatest pieces of art ever created. But there's a part in it where they talk, and this is a real thing, where they talk about chakras, and you have different portions of your body where different energies flow and all this. And some people believe in this, some don't. But that when things happen in your life, when injuries happen, when you have different complicated things happen in your life, Porzingis has obviously had a bunch of different things like this. When somebody, obviously outshines you, and Luka Doncic, stuff comes up and it blocks your chakras, and you just got to clear it all out and just let it flow. Like, let the energy flow. And it feels like Porzingis has some blocked chakras right now. Like, it just seems like
that's a good analogy. I like that.
It seems like there's something with him that just needs to be, flushed out and just needs to start anew, basically.
Maybe it was Rick Carlisle.
It could be. Honestly, it could be. We all were like, oh, the Luka KP relationship. Maybe it's Carlisle. Maybe it's Carlisle that just didn't understand how to talk to a player like that or how to work with a player like that. And we'll find out. And the thing is, we'll either find out if Jason Kidd is the right one or if maybe we don't know anything, right? Because if it still doesn't work, then we don't know, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting we said Carlisle because Carlisle was one of the ones who was one of the more staunch defenders of Porzingis night in and night out. Carlisle would go out of his way to praise Kristaps Porzingis when it wasn't necessarily called for at times. But at the same, flip side of that, maybe it's a change of scenery from a coach standpoint that allows Porzingis to be the full version of himself. Because Kidd has talked about it during this offseason that he wants to get Porzingis back to some of the things that he was when he was in New York, a guy that during his first 4 seasons was averaging 2.3 blocks per 36 minutes. that has obviously slipped dramatically since then. But if he can be the full version of himself, both offensively and defensively, now the Mavericks have something that they can definitely work with. And I think Tim Hardaway has seen what Porzingis can be on both ends of the floor and what his full version of himself looks like when he's right. And I think he wants to see that again, and maybe a new head coach and Jason Kidd will be able to unlock that for him.
I sure hope he unlocks the chakras. I sure hope so.
Clean, flush out the energy.
Flush
I like
it
that.
out.
Flush it out, man. I like that. That's a life mantra. I'm going to have to use that myself. That's good. That's
The
good.
Guru. It's a great episode of Avatar. And half the audience is now rolling their eyes, and the other half is like, that's perfect. That's such a great analogy. That's a great show.
Exactly. That's
Isaac
right.
and I have our listeners split on that show. I bring it up a lot.
Well, apparently I need to check it out to be able to, be in on
It's
it,
so
too.
good. It's so good. The last thing we'll get to is I just want to get your take on the Lauri Markkanen trade. So it goes down. He goes to the Cleveland Cavaliers. He gets paid $16+ million a year. The Portland Trailblazers give up a first-round pick, and so the Bulls do get their first-round pick for Lauri Markkanen. Larry Nance ends up going to Portland. What did you think about this deal? Were you upset the Mavericks didn't get in on it? Were you disappointed that the Mavericks didn't get Lauri Markkanen?
I guess a few things. I guess the Bulls, their stick-to-itiveness was rewarded because it's like, we're not coming off that first-round pick. We're going to find ourselves getting that. And it sounded like it was an offer they just simply couldn't refuse, even though Markkanen clearly wanted out of Chicago. It felt like for a while that Chicago was willing to go ahead and hang on to him until they got what they felt was an offer they couldn't refuse, and they got it. And there was reports by Shams Charania of The Athletic that Dallas was one of the teams that had shown interest, in Markkanen, but they didn't have the kind of dollars that Markkanen was looking for. So it would have been him taking a little bit of a, pay cut in his mind to come to Dallas if that was a place where he wanted to go, which is ironic because wasn't he the one around, posting Dirk Nowitzki, photos on his Instagram of his jerseys and all this other stuff. So who knows how much he really wanted to be a Maverick, because if he really wanted to, he may have taken a few $1 million less to actually come here. But I think for all sides, as far as the trade was concerned, Portland and Cleveland and Chicago, it sounds like everyone got what they wanted out of the deal. And Markkanen for him, the biggest thing was getting paid, which he did with Cleveland now.
Problem with Cleveland is we don't know what they want, right?
Well, look at all these big men between Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, who they drafted out of USC, and now you got Markkanen in there. And Kevin Love's
Love.
like, yeah,
Hanging
Kevin Love's
out.
like, yeah, I'm not taking, a buyout. I'm going to collect my $30 million for the next, couple of seasons. They've got a real conundrum there with all the big men that they have. So I'm interested to see how they are able to use that rotation of big men that they have. And they just paid Jared Allen, $100 million to stay there too. So they've got a lot of money committed to, some big guys out there in Cleveland.
I was the most jealous for Portland because I love Larry Nance. I think he's great. I think he's like the upgrade on Maxey that I think everyone wants, right? Like I think he would be, or at least a guy that could give us 2 Maxies, which would be and a little bit better of a passer for Maxey. I've followed him ever since he got drafted by the Lakers, and I think he's just the perfect player for the Mavericks. I think he would just fit so well. He's improved as a shooter. He's a playmaker. He can defend a couple different positions. I think that they got a really good player in him. Now, is it going to change Dame's mind? Is it going to, make them that much better of a team? No, but it makes them, I don't know, like 5% better than they were before. And I think that plus some of the other moves they made and all that, maybe they're back into the playoff race and back where they want to be.
Yeah, Nance is a guy that's going to give you a lot of range defensively, and I think that's something that in the Western Conference you're going to need a lot of with the kinds of guys that you're going to be guarding night in and night out. So they definitely got better for sure by acquiring Larry Nance, and I think the fit is really good for him. It's interesting to see how Chauncey Billups uses him as part of that rotation out there in Portland this year.
I forgot Chauncey Billups is their coach.
Yeah,
Sometimes
man.
so many offseason moves happen.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, man. How are you feeling about the Mavs? We'll end on this. You feeling good? You feeling positive, upbeat after the presser? Sometimes pressers happen and you're like, ugh, I'm supposed to feel good about that. People were DMing us the photo of all the guys holding up their jerseys. And they're like, if someone showed this to you before the offseason, said this is how it's going to end, how would you feel, right? Like,
it's funny because everybody who kept commenting on the photos of the guys holding up their jerseys were like, man, Moses Brown is really like 8 feet tall. That dude is like towering over everybody. Look, do I think the Mavericks improved? I do think the Mavericks improved on the margins based on what they were able to accomplish after they lost out on the Kyle Lowry sweepstakes. And you've got guys that fit what this team is already, and you got better, I think, better defensively. And for a team last year that has to find itself getting better defensively, they're going to have to find guys that will improve certain areas. So Reggie Bullock, for example, is going to be a guy that's going to guard. There it is right there. Yeah, you got Moses Brown towering over everyone there. But, Bullock is a guy that's going to guard multiple positions. Sterling Brown the same way. And when you can get guys that can defend but also be typical 3-and-D wings, like Bullock is a perfect 3-and-D player for today's NBA. Shoots the ball at a high clip from the three-point line and defends multiple positions. Brown is going to be interesting to see how he fits into this rotation of big men that the Dallas Mavericks has. We were talking about how Cleveland's got a big man problem. The Dallas Mavericks between Porzingis, Willie Cauley, you throw Moses Brown in there, you brought back Boban, Marjanovic, Dwight Powell is there. You've got a lot of centers themselves that'll be interesting to see how Jason Kidd works in their rotation. So I think based on what they wanted to do after not getting Kyle Lowry, I think they did improve. But for Mavericks fans, they'll go back to, well, Mark Cuban told us going into the offseason, we had to get a secondary ball handler and creator, maybe even a quote-unquote third star, and the Mavericks didn't necessarily accomplish that. But I think what's important to keep in mind with the players that they signed is that these are guys that are going to help you improve now, but these are really good trade assets also. These are going to be guys that know their role and going to perform based on playing with Luka Doncic, and they're movable contracts that you could find yourself building in the future. So I think all in all, the Mavericks improved. I gave their grade a C+ this offseason as far as if you want to give out offseason grades. That's what I gave it, just based on the fact that they didn't accomplish their ultimate goal, but they did improve, I thought, on the margins this offseason.
My question about this picture that we're showing on YouTube, and it's just the presser of them all standing up there. So Kidd is supposed to be what, 6'4", 6'5", and Tim Hardaway is supposed to be 6'5" something, and then Bullock's supposed to be 6'6". They're like a perfect line, like right down the 1 inch difference. But I don't know. I think either Tim Hardaway. I think I asked you this on the day. Is Tim Hardaway Jr. wearing some boots, or is he like 2 inches taller than Jason Kidd, or is Jason Kidd getting shorter? Because it seems like Kidd is a little shorter than Tim Hardaway.
I think Hardaway's got an inch or two on Kidd. You know how these things go in the programs. They got guys that are listed at 6'4", 6'5", when they're actually like 6'1", 6'2", 6'3".
Oh, the JJ Barea clause, right?
Exactly. So he may be listed at 6'4", but Jason Kidd may be really like 6'2", 6'3", that kind of thing. But no, I think Tim Hardaway's got a couple of inches on him.
Knowing that Jason Kidd is 6'4", and I think Nico Harris is like 6'5". Like he's
a legit like 6'5". Yeah, I agree.
He's legit a little tall. He's like definitely taller than me, and I'm 6'3". So like I'm looking up at him. That really puts Moses Brown's height into perspective, how big that dude is, because it's not like Nico Harrison's like 6 foot or even like 5'9" or something like that.
Yeah, Moses Brown is every bit of that 7 feet plus. And
he's hunched over. Look at him. His head is like.
He's bending his head down a little bit. It's funny because I think a lot of Mavs fans are really excited about Brown. Dwayne Price had mentioned, some of the 2020 games that he had, this past season. I think fans are excited about him and want to see him stick around. I know folks are like, well, maybe he's part of a Goran Dragic trade at some point, down the road, maybe that kind of thing. But if he does stick around with this team, I think a lot of folks are excited to see what Brown can bring as part of that big man rotation that the Mavericks have.
What can Brown do for you? It's a great question for the Mavericks. Either one of them.
That's true. Now they got two of them. That's right.
There you go. Kevin Gray. Again, you can find him, Kevin Gray Sports. We'll put the link to the YouTube channel in the description. You can follow him on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. We will be back with more with a What If tomorrow. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Boom.